So I'm muting myself. I can turn this off now, right? Let me go in. So I can close my. You are live. Just checking every Hello, thanks for bearing with us as we got started with our translated versions of this parent town hall. I'm Kelly Avance, the Chief Communication Officer for Clovis Unified, and tonight I'm joined with members of our executive leadership team who are going to be joining me as they turn their video on as we get started. I again want to thank everyone for tuning in to watch this presentation and participate in this live event. As you know, typically we would be gathering in our school communities around small group meetings that allow people to have direct interaction with their school principals and leaders around important topics like the one we're talking about today. Unfortunately, with the need to physically distance that we're in and experiencing today, we did still feel like it was so critically important to provide our community with an opportunity to come together virtually and pose questions and hear information from our leadership team. We know there's a lot of questions on the minds of our parents as information has changed on a regular basis based on the conditions of the COVID outbreak, even here in Fresno County, as well as around the state. So I wanted to, as we get started and before we do some introductions, just wanted to remind everyone that during the event, we have tailored the presentation and the comments that you're going to hear from our leadership team based on questions that were submitted by our parent community. Recognizing that we were going to have a lot of people tuning in tonight, we did present an option to submit your questions in advance, and as of this afternoon had received over 1,000 questions from members of our community. Those 1,000 questions turned into the presentation and the Q&A that you're going to watch right now from our leadership team. And throughout the presentation, if you would like to submit another question, use that same form that is posted on the YouTube channel under the description of this event, and you can submit your questions that way, and we will weave them into the presentation and address them either in close to real time or at the conclusion. And any that we don't get to tonight, do know that we will be continuing to update our frequently asked questions and other materials for parents as well, so that they would be able to continue to get those questions answered in the days to come. So without further ado, and again, thank you for joining us, I'm going to turn this over to introduce the rest of my Zoom compatriots. First and foremost, Stacy, who has joined us to present for our ASL community, and also for our Spanish-speaking community on some of our other bilingual channels. We have Rebecca. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to Mr. Anderson for his introduction as well.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Norm Anderson, and I'm the Deputy Superintendent. Welcome, everybody.
Good evening. My name is Barry Jager. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources and Employee Relations. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Michael Johnston. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Administrative Services. Good to be here tonight.
Hi, I'm Corinne Fulmer. I'm the Associate Superintendent over School Leadership and looking forward to our time together.
Good evening. My name is Robin Castillo, and I'm the Associate Superintendent for Instructional Services.
And good evening, everybody. My name is Emer O'Farrell, and I'm the proud Superintendent of Clovis Unified School District. I just want to welcome our parents, our guardians, our community members, and members of the Clovis Unified Governing Board who are with us this evening. Thank you all for tuning into this live stream event. I know that this whole journey going back to March has been an emotional one for all of us, and the education of our children continues to weigh heavily on each of us. You, our parents and guardians, our students and employees, and of course our governing board. I want to start off the evening by clarifying our process for deciding on the reopening of our schools. And then my team will provide an overview of some of the questions that you've already submitted. And of course, we'll answer as many questions as we can during this presentation. So back on March 12th, the Governor of California issued an executive order which clearly stated that local school districts must heed to their local Department of Public Health guidelines. That meant that legally, we as a school district must adhere to the Fresno County Department of Public Health guidelines. And therefore, we've been in daily contact, and myself and Mr. Anderson, our Deputy Superintendent, have attended weekly a county task force meeting with the Department of Public Health Director and the interim physician for the county. And they've been able to answer questions all along. Also, back in May, we decided and we told our community that we would be ready by July 15th for our governing board to make a decision on reopening so that our community would have time to plan for the August 17th start date to the school year. And so over the summer, we got busy. We created a reopening schools committee. It consisted of multiple subcommittees with representatives from all district departments, and with about 50% being teachers. And they focused on instructional delivery, special education, safety, health, transportation, school meals, co-curricular programs, all that kind of thing. And then we also sought feedback via multiple surveys from our parent and guardian community, our staff, and our teachers. And in addition, you know, many people contacted our governing board with their varied opinions on how we should reopen. So the committee studied all that feedback as well as the information from our Department of Public Health, our CDC, the California Department of Education, and other relevant information. You know, there were over 800 pages of comments from parents and staff, a significant number of whom pleaded with us to find a way to offer a choice to bring our kids back to school and a choice to have an online option. So, you know, sometime there in late June, the Department of Public Health actually came out to a school and they studied a typical classroom set up with ancillary furniture removed, desks 6 feet apart, which meant approximately 18 students could fit into a standard classroom. They discussed topics with us such as what recess would look like, entrance and exit protocols, bathroom breaks and hand washing schedules, what lunchtime would look like, that kind of thing. And we realized that we could balance the concerns, the fears, the anguish of our parents, students and teachers with a learning environment strictly aligned to the health official guidelines, and thus provide that choice for those teachers and students who wish to return. So we would have utilized all available spaces on our campuses, bus students to locations as needed, and even created an AM/PM schedule if needed. Our feedback also indicated we would have had enough teachers who would also wish to avail of an online option. And so our governor came out publicly during the summer stating that the decision for reopening schools would be left in the hands of the local Department of Public Health and local school districts. Each week he came out with different messages on topics related to schools, such as mandated face coverings. However, all along, our understanding was that the ultimate decision would be the responsibility of local school districts. And to that end, our reopening committee proposed some options that we took to our board, as promised back in May, at their regularly scheduled July 15th board meeting. Both models involved what we heard from our staff and community, which was to provide a choice of an online and face-to-face option, all within the Department of Public Health strict guidelines. And as you know, our board carefully studied both models and ultimately selected the 5-day option. And we were all ready to start that process, identifying which teachers and students would avail of those choices. When the governor did a complete turnaround on Friday the 17th, removing that local control, and instead directed us to be evaluated by county, all 58 counties in California. If you may not realize that Fresno County is over 6,000 square miles. So our charge now is to all work together as a county to get ourselves off that watch list so that we can all return to school. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. So, you know, in the meantime, I want to remind our parents and guardians to complete your annual information update so that we know what your plans are when we pivot back, and also to ascertain your technology needs. It's been an emotional summer for everyone, but now that we have clear guidance and criteria, we are engaged in providing the best distance learning program in the state of California for our students. And school will start on Monday, August 17th as planned. So with that, I hope I've clarified the process for everyone. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Associate Superintendent of School Leadership, Corinne Fulmer.
Thank you, Dr. O'Farrell. I'm going to start off first by answering some questions that we received. I do have some slides that will make some clarify some of this as we work through some of the presentation difficulties we're having right now. But one of the questions that came in and has been asked several times is, what is the difference in our annual information update if parents choose online or the traditional at school model? And I can understand the confusion with these instructional models, with all of our students moving to an online instructional setting, as Dr. O'Farrell explained how that occurred. Essentially, we are still asking parents to answer this question to help us better plan for when the COVID situation in our county improves. So a student who chooses online is a student that when restrictions are lifted, which would allow the return of students to an on-site model, would still opt to continue with online instruction. So if that's your family and your child and you, even when restrictions are lifted and we can bring students back, would like online, then you would select online. And the traditional would be for students that would be willing to return to a face-to-face instruction with whatever guidance needs to be followed at the time that that's permitted. And we're really using this information to help us on the staffing component to try to make sure that as we shift through models that there's continuity as best as we can with teachers and students. One of the other questions that we've received is, as we talked about that annual information update, is what if I pick a model now, can I change it later? And absolutely. When the situation in the county improves to a point that we could return to campus, we will resurvey our parents to determine in that current situation at that time and with whatever the restrictions would be implemented, or I should say precautionary guidance that we would implement on an on-site model. With those being in place, we will resurvey parents for them to make a decision based on that given situation. So I don't want parents feeling like I'm making a choice now in July and I may change my mind by the time, I don't know, September or October, whenever the situation may improve. And so a few other questions, and I'm hoping we can get some models up here, is what will online instruction look like? What will that daily instruction look like? And some of it is, oh, maybe it's coming. Well, I can address the things that will go with this slide. So I'm going to adjust to how are teachers, one of the questions we got are, how are teachers involved in instruction? You can see on this slide in the very first image there, daily live instruction. And so our teachers will be delivering instruction on a daily basis and will be delivering their Clovis Unified curriculum. This will be done via using mediums such as Zoom, Google Classroom, and Clever. This also leads to how is attendance going to be taken? That was a question. And attendance is going to be taken on a daily basis, and it's going to be documented, I apologize, by families that, by students logging into Zoom and by work completed that's assigned by the teacher. With this, you can see that meeting student needs, and one of those needs is going to be also echoed down below in technology needs. So some of the questions that we've heard from our community is, how will families get the technology they need for online learning? And really, that is going to be done in completing that annual information update that I referenced before, where we're asking families to still complete what model preference. There's questions on there that will ask each family to indicate if they are in need of a device for their child or if they're in need of a hotspot to help with connectivity to the internet. And we are planning to get devices to all students and families in need, as well as help with the connectivity issues that some of our community have. Let's see. I think Records, recording, let's see, attendance, I addressed. The accountability plan, we're really working with parents, you're right, to complete this. One of the questions we've had is, what about families who can't be home during the day to help their children with online learning? We're doing a couple of things to help address this, because we recognize this is a challenge for many parents that are working. We are going to offer sessions for parents and students to help them learn how to access the technology with orientations and support. We are planning on having at sites numbers that parents can call when students are having difficulty to support that. We also recognize that some of our community will want a flexible schedule, which will be supported for those in grades 7 through 12. Parents that are wanting a flexible schedule can elect to be a part of a program with Edgenuity that will allow for more flexibility in the schedule of the day. And we recognize that this is also an option that we need to explore at the elementary level, and we're working through that on what that might look like to give some flexibility to families. I think if we could progress maybe to the slides, some of the big questions is, what's the online model going to look like? And so here are just a few examples. You can see here, this is kindergarten, that there's time built in there for those interventions and for meetings that are needed with families, and that there's some instructional blocks here. And during that time, teachers will be delivering new instruction. They will be having students participate in classroom learning activities. They may have students logging on to Google Classroom to complete work following their direct instruction, but they will be available to our students to support them through the learning. This is one example, like I said, of TK in kindergarten. There is an example as well for what grades 1 through 6 could look like. To address that, you can see that there's more time. So these are to meet the instructional minutes that we and provide the best learning environment for our students. These blocks of times will allow for breaks for everyone to kind of get a reprieve from being on a Zoom and a computer screen for a long duration. And then you can also see as we go through the secondary schedules. Example here. Oh, I apologize. And this is one that will also address that we will still have a Wednesday early release for teachers to PLC and work together to plan those instruction and maximize those instructional blocks for our students. We also have our proposed secondary. In this slide, if your screen, it's very full here, but you can see that Mondays we would have students zooming into all of their classes. The idea behind this is, while it's a shortened period, that teachers get to set the work for the week, they get to touch base with their students 3 times a week. And then we would have alternating blocks that allow for more in-depth instruction, as well as breakout periods and in-depth learning. One of the questions with some of these schedules has been, will my child be able to access CTE and CART? And these schedules do allow for our secondary students to have access to CTE courses and to CART through the online. I know CART is planning for a full online instructional model to start the school year, which is aligned to the Clovis and Fresno Unified Instructional Plans as of July. And that teachers have spent the summer planning for these online options. It will help us, parents completing that, like I said, that annual information update to help us make sure that we can get our students in the models that work best for their families and allow for these schedules. As I look through some of these questions, I think some of them don't have a slide to go with. So I want to address that we've had several questions regarding clubs and VAP and athletics, because we recognize that that connectivity for our students, and we've heard from our parents that is very important. And so there have been a great deal of questions about campus club and after school sports and activities, especially following our governor's guidance on Friday. And we have reached out to the state, to the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools and our local health departments to get more clarification of what will be and will not be permitted moving forward. As soon as we get that clarification, we will notify parents and staff. We know that CIF came out with their plan for athletics on Monday, which pushed back the athletic seasons to starting in December. We're also working to adjust our VAPA events to accommodate our plays and concerts beginning in January, pending, as always, the guidance of our county public department of health. Some other questions we've had with regards to co-curriculars has been that if my child chooses online, will they get to participate? And yes, your child would have access to these programs. The exception being that if a parent in grades 7 through 12 would opt to choose to enroll their child into the Clovis online school for the flexibility of schedule, then they would not have that access. And then I think I addressed, one of the other questions we've received has been, why are sports programs still happening if kids can't come on campus? And as I've discussed, this is being reviewed by our public department of health, and the plan that we've been implementing was approved by them. Of course, based on the guidance of that has recently been received, we're seeking clarification that things are subject to change. I think as I'm looking that there, I'm sorry, I'm going to clarify a question that's come in. So there's a question about how does Edgenuity work compared to the other online that we're offering for all students. So if a family decided that they wanted flexibility in the schedule, they would opt for something like Edgenuity. So Edgenuity will have a teacher that's there to assist and support, but Edgenuity itself has teacher lessons embedded into the curriculum that students could access at any day or time that works best for their schedule. There are assessments built into that. And they would work essentially at their own pace, and things are released typically at a weekly basis. The online model that we are offering through our school sites as a result of not being able to offer the face-to-face will be where teachers are following that similar schedules that I gave as examples. And they will be daily engaging during those timeframes with students, providing instruction, assessing student learning, allowing for opportunities for practice and answering questions. And so their availability will be within those timeframes based on those example schedules, which could change, but are pretty firm to kind of what a day would look like.
So Corinne, I'm going to
thank you.
Chime in with just some of the questions that we are getting. As you had mentioned, that there was a lot of questions about Edgenuity versus the online model. I put back up on the screen those components of the online model that we're talking about as we start the school year, and that there is distinct between a teacher curriculum that they're delivering in a classroom. We also had a question come in as you were talking and addressing those others about the technology that you mentioned. And as parents are signing up for the school year, what if they at first say, oh, I don't think I need technology, and then a week into the school year suddenly think, you know what, I do actually need to check that technology device or hotspot out. Is that still going to be an option for them by contacting their school?
Absolutely. So the annual information update, by marking it on there, just allows us to work a little ahead of time to know our needs and get devices ready for distribution. We will always work to meet our student needs. And so parents, and it happens, all of a sudden a computer's not working, or whatever had planned that isn't happening. Those things occur often, especially in my household sometimes. And so absolutely, I would encourage them, should they find themselves in that situation, to please reach out to their school sites, and the school sites will work diligently to get them the access and devices that their child needs to access the learning.
Great, thanks. Another of the questions that we had that I think is burning on everyone's mind, I know as a parent of a senior myself, when will parents expect to get their child's schedule for the year? Is that still going to be consistent with the time that you typically find out who your classroom teacher is, what your schedule is, or is there a different time frame that we're looking at?
Yes, so that's a great question. Our goal is always to keep as close to when typically that would happen. The more that parents complete that annual information update, it allows us to better know how to adjust staffing and balancing of classes based on what parents think their long-term might be. We recognize, like I said, that should the situation change, that we will accommodate that and we will be resurveying, but it does allow us to make some plans ahead of time to make sure that those schedules, and that we can minimize any disruptions to our students and teachers as much as possible. when the situation does change and we are allowed to bring students back to a face-to-face model.
Right. Thank you, Corinne. I'm checking real quickly what other, we also got a question that I think would be best for you to address. We had been talking prior to last Thursday about the hybrid model that had a blended on-site and at-home environment. Can you clarify why that has been taken out of the mix with the governor's most recent announcement of mandates from the California Department of Public Health?
Absolutely. So with those mandates, we are a county that's on the watch list, and so we are not able to bring students at this time onto campus. And a hybrid model was bringing our students onto campus in smaller groups to meet some of the guidance we had prior to the governor's new information and guidance. So we've had to adjust for online for everyone, but our teachers are working diligently. They're prepared to provide what they would have done in the classroom. Like I said, they'll be delivering teacher curriculum, what they would have done in their classrooms, just through the medium of technology, and maximizing the opportunity of that direct instruction and follow-up activities through things like Google Classroom, iReady, a wide variety of other resources that they have to support student learning.
Great. And actually, I think that's a great segue over to ask Dr. Castillo to begin her part of the presentation. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Castillo as well to speak to some of the other questions we got around training and some of the curriculum components.
Good evening, everybody. I'm pleased to talk about some of our instructional practices that we have and issues with special education. And so the first question that I'm going to address is, what curriculum will be used and will it be aligned to the standards and college preparatory requirements? So the teachers in our district using the online model will all be using our district adopted curriculum and textbooks, which are all aligned with the state standards. This includes our college preparatory and AP classes as well. So many of our textbooks are available online, but there are also several textbooks that will need to be checked out from the school site. So as teachers are delivering instruction, students have the books to read, the problems to reference, as well as things that they will be receiving through online platforms. Many of our textbooks also include online support materials, both for teachers and for students. Our curriculum and instruction department has been working tirelessly this summer, providing online virtual summer school instruction, and also working on preparing our instructional resources for teachers that fit with our normal teaching that we do when it was pre-COVID time. And so that way it will link online resources that will be available for kids and for teachers. Teachers will also be utilizing supplementary materials, just like they do when instruction is delivered face to face. So some of those will be online materials, and then some of them will be independent work that students are doing. So lots of similar materials that you would see in normal face-to-face instruction. So it's a lot of the same of the what, but how it's delivered will be a little bit different because they'll be seeing their teacher through Zoom instead of being in the classroom. The second question that I had, and I think we have a slide that goes with this, will teachers use a wide variety of learning platforms and systems for turning in work, presenting materials? If so, how do parents know how to use them? So this is a screenshot of Clever. And so Clever is available for all of our students, and this is how they access their online learning. So you can see the big G for Google Drive. So when they're that's how they will get to Google Classroom. And Google Classroom is a platform that has features for distributing and collecting student work back, amongst others. Zoom is in there. So there's a link where they would click on Zoom, and that would get them to a platform that connects them to be live with their teacher. It also has other instructional features that teachers can use. But teachers may also use additional online learning tools to supplement classroom instruction. So you can see an Illuminate button in there. That's one of our assessment tools that we use. And so that's how students will be accessing that. During the first week of school, there will be opportunities for students to get the opportunity to learn how to log on and how to connect, and also some information going out to parents so that they can support. We will also have people available at the school sites that can hook you up with the right person to answer your question whenever there's a need, because we know with technology, sometimes there's little glitches, and we'll work really hard to get everyone the support that they need. But the beginning of school will be making sure that students understand how to access these. Like I said, Clever is great because once kids go into Clever, they only put their password in one time, and then it gets them into all of their other accounts in one easy, simple way. Along with that, there was a question about how will assessments work for students. So students will take a variety of assessments online as platforms such as Illuminate that I referred to earlier, but teachers will also communicate with students and parents on specifics to their classroom, because depending on the grade level, the course, they may be using different platforms to assess students. We're also looking into how we can make sure that that is secure, so that we want students to be honest and we want them to be accountable for their learning. So we know that there are privacy laws that we are going to stay into accordance with, but we also want to make sure our systems can help as much as possible to keep students honest, and it also allows teachers to properly evaluate their students. We want to know where they are, what they need assistance with, and so it'll be important to gauge where they really are. So that's how we will work with assessments. There was a question about concerns for continuity of education as we switch back and forth from a face-to-face to online model. And will students still be with the same teacher? Will they have the same schedule? Will they have the same curriculum? I will say for the most part, students will be staying with the same teacher and courses. However, there may be changes depending on the choices that are made at the time that we return to face-to-face. So if initially you say that you want face-to-face and then later you switch to online, there may have to be a switch of teacher, and the same for vice versa. But for the most part, we're trying to keep them engaged with the same teacher as much as possible. As far as curriculum, if any student is using the online, everyone will start online, so they'll be at the same pace on the same thing, doing the same curriculum. If students do select the Edgenuity option that Corinne talked about, teachers will pace that out week by week, so it'll stay in line with what's happening at the secondary sites, so that we can keep that match as close as possible to make that as seamless as possible for students. But there is a possibility that we may need to make adjustments depending on people's change in choice and preference. We've also had questions about Campus Club and after-school instructional supports like ACES and academic interventions. So as far as Campus Club goes, this summer we've had a pilot Campus Club program, and we really commend our Campus Club staff for the tremendous job that they've done. The students are socially distanced, a small number in the classroom, lots of safety protocols, practices, and procedures going in that, working with that program. However, moving into the school year and with the recent change with the governor, we're in communication with the County Office of Education and the County Health Department for the most up-to-date information on what we will be allowed to do as far as having students on our campus. And we will share that with parents as soon as we receive specific direction. As far as ACES and academic intervention, as you saw on the schedule that Mrs. Fulmer presented, there is built in some time for academic intervention. And our schools that have the ACES program can support online, but not face-to-face until we are able to return to campus. I think we have a slide about social emotional. We had a question about that. If a child is struggling social emotionally, how can I find them help through school? I want parents to know that they should still contact the school site like you normally would do. Social emotional supports will be available to support our students. This is a social emotional graphic that shows all the types of supports that we provide in our district. And I want to thank our school psychologists and wellness coordinators who have put this together for us. It'll be important to contact your individual school site for specifics for your level and for your school, because at elementary it looks a little bit different than at the secondary level. But the social emotional support is key, and it's very important. And we will take referrals from students referring themselves, teacher referrals through the daily contacts they have with students, parent referrals. All of these things are so important to keep our students engaged and safe, and really reinforcing their all-around well-being. My next question is about 504 and special education and how that is going to work. Obviously, there's a lot of layers to 504s and to special education. They will be following the same online schedule as all of our general education students. We will make sure we have supports in place. There's a lot of specifics that go into special education. And so what we have decided to do is we're going to have an additional town hall meeting specific for special education parents. And we're going to hold that on July 30th at 5 o'clock in the evening. And that will specifically address special education topics and questions. So parents will get the opportunity to submit questions ahead of time so that we'll be able to address them in a forum similar to this with our special education administrative staff, who's working really hard to get things ready for our students to come back. We're really excited to see them. I have an additional question that came up about working parents. Do they need to choose online model if they need to work in the evenings and can't be with kids in the daytime? Our general online that we're doing for all students does follow a daily schedule, like Mrs. Fulmer presented earlier. And so students would be required to log on because we're taking daily attendance. We want to make sure they get that live instruction. So that is something that would be a requirement. So parents who felt like that their student would not be able to come on during scheduled class during the day, the other option that Mrs. Fulmer talked about for secondary with Edgenuity does allow for flexibility. So students can do their work in the evening and have contact with the teacher during the daytime, and they can release information for them. And again, we're working on an elementary option for that as well. There was another question about honors and GATE programs. Our honors classes are being offered at the school sites like they normally are. Programs like GATE and things like that, Mrs. Fulmer said, we're working on how we can have those extra programs that would be happening outside of that instructional block time, because we want our students to have every opportunity. And so we will get more information about how those services can be accessed if they're not already a built-in course that's during our regular schedule during the day.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. And I think what I heard you say there is that the honors programs, the co-curricular programs in this online model right now are obviously going to look very different because we have these limitations on allowing kids onto campus, but that in what I didn't hear you say, but I think that what was implied is that individual school sites, so if my child's in a GATE program at Cox Elementary, I'll be hearing from them about how that will look at their elementary school within the general framework of these schedules that we shared. Would that be accurate? Okay,
correct.
Great. Thank you. We also have gotten a few questions from people who are asking, are these slides going to be available? Is a recording of this presentation going to be available? And so I did want to pause and just reassure everyone that that will be available and posted on our YouTube channel where the event was held originally. So if you missed it or if you came in late, certainly you can go back and watch that over as well. This is absolutely an ongoing dialogue, as we know there's just so many questions to be answered. So with Dr. Castillo, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll come back to you in a little while. And before we go too much further, I'm going to turn it over to Barry Jager for a discussion about some of the staffing components that are related to our plans right now too.
Good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Thank you again for your partnership We are grateful to have such a supportive community, and the role that you play is one that we will continue to partner with now and continuing forward with the 2021 school year and beyond. So our partnership with our community is at the utmost of a priority, as it is educating our students. A few topics around a very, very important theme of contact tracing, health and safety, and really the support of additional employees to our district. I just want to share with you that the questions that have been focused around contact tracing and health and safety, I'll refer to the slide that is presented to you, and it is online. It's on our website. You are able to access this. You don't have to recall it. As you do take a look at the link, it is our 2021 Return to School Health and Safety Plan. What we have wanted to do is provide a very thorough document to our community to be aware of all of the layers that we have looked into to make sure that as we partner with our community, we work with our certificated and classified employees, that we are providing the most outstanding education to our students during these unique times. And so you will be able to reference this particular document. The area that I will guide us to is the one that is the staff health and personnel section. That is a tab that will refer to a document that will be shown now. And these are examples of multiple scenarios that will happen to us. And we are preparing, as we have partnered with the CDC, the Department of Public Health, to make sure that we do have contact tracing in place. And so I will not quickly, but briefly take you through the scenarios of person A, person B, person C, person D. And we are aware that there will be a person E, F, and G eventually. But as we take a look, you will see that those that will have tested positive, what we will do with the symptoms, the time frames, and those that need to be reported through our contact tracing. The greatest thing that we are proud to share is thank you to Jeannie Prandini, who has worked with the Department of Public Health on a daily, weekly basis, and she is our Director of Nursing Services. And to all of our nurses in Clovis Unified, we are tremendously grateful for the training, their knowledge, and their support as we move into the opening of the 2021 school year, and obviously previous years. But prior to school starting on the 18th of August, all of our nurses district-wide will have been trained and will be contact tracers moving forward. We are tremendously grateful for that. We are also working with our Human Resources Department and our benefits team so that we can address situations that are presented to us, information that is shared with us, and that we do have the appropriate follow through and contact moving forward to receive the necessary information. And so you will see the situation with person A is tested positive, the time frame, the expectations, and what we will do to make sure that situations are addressed. Same thing with person B, who has been in a situation where they have been exposed. Person C creates an opportunity for those that have been in contact, the time frame they've been in contact, the distance they've been in contact, then ultimately person D that does not need any action required, but does allow us to address those moving forward. We are excited to say that, again, I may have said this, but may want to correct this. School started August 18th, not the 17th. My apologies. As I have so many dates running through my head, I appreciate correcting that for you moving forward. Also knowing that it is our goal to make sure that we do work with in accordance with the guidelines and the mandates shared in regards to the contact tracing and all of the safety guidelines that are being shared with us moving forward. That was one of the questions in regards to contact tracing protocols for staff and what they look like before kids are on campus. Another question that was shared is, what happens if a teacher gets sick during the school year with COVID? Well, as we do normally, as situations present themselves, we do have a tremendous resource in our substitute teachers that have gone through an orientation, that have gone through a series of trainings. What we are looking to do now is make sure that our subs that are deeply committed to our district, because it's their passion to support our students, be available to us. It is a resource unlike no other. And when situations do present themselves, we are currently working to make sure that added to those orientations are COVID online trainings, as well as teaching online workshops that we're working to make sure that our subs are equipped with the information and prepared on how to deliver the instruction online and make sure that they are available to our students. And then moving forward, we will have a resource of subs that we will communicate with to be available and ready to be a part of the instructional team that will keep our students connected to school and keep their academics at the forefront. Another question that was asked from the community was, how will the rest of the instructional team be used to support our students during online learning? That's a tremendous question, because we do have such great resources with our certificated and classified employees that we do look to put into assignments that will support our students in a variety of ways. And we look to lean on our student resource liaisons, also known as our SRLs, throughout many of our secondary campuses, our instructional aides that will be connected in a variety of ways and will provide additional intervention and be available online for resource support. As we go through, we have utilized our campus monitors in a specific way to be available and be a part of our instructional team. And these would be alternate assignments, because we are well aware that in many cases, our students and our families connect with many of these resources that have worked, reached out, and become available online, by phone, by email, and in many cases text, because they've created such a relationship with our families and with our students that they become part of that instructional fabric. As we go forward, child development and the tremendous resources that would be available through our campus club and our after school programs would be a part of our instructional resources. The list goes on, because we have developed such tremendous connectivity with our transition teams throughout our areas at the elementary, intermediate, and high school levels that would be available for social and emotional support and connectivity, as well as that academic resource. Because in many cases, as teachers are connecting with their students, it's our transition team and our support staff that does the continuous follow through. And so we would utilize those resources to make sure that their academics needs are being addressed. Again, as I shared, social, emotional, and then providing additional intervention. And I know I've worked with and communicated with this entire executive team, and but Dr. Castillo and Ms. Fulmer have worked with their team to make sure that school leadership and the priorities of academic needs are addressed for the many different needs that we will have for as it was shared earlier, the instructional platforms that will be made available, but for students that will need the additional for our EL support and those that need additional intervention. So we do have a tremendous resource of our classified and certificated employees that are deeply committed to our students and will connect just as they have in person, but they will be doing it virtually like we are tonight. And so I thank you for those questions, and I'll just reinforce that the health and safety of our employees and of our students continues to be paramount with the current pandemic situation that we are in. We are working daily to make sure that as the ever evolving changes happen to our families and to our school district, we are current with everything so that we maintain such a current processes and safety guidelines.
Thank you, Barry, for covering that information. And we're going to pause before we go to Mr. Johnston and some of our operational questions that have been received, and backtrack to cover some of the questions that have come in as we've been sharing this information from the several thousand people who are watching us right now. So I'm going to start with Dr. Castillo. We had some questions that came in around students who receive services through Title VII, I'm sorry, and who receive EL services. Will those still be in place, or how will parents access that type of support?
Yes, those services will still be in place. So some of the services are coordinated through our curriculum and instruction through our supplemental services office. So again, those services will be delivered online. So things like Indian education, those would be offered online through our personnel in that department. As far as EL support for our students that may need support in Spanish, Hmong, or other languages, at the school sites, we have bilingual instructional aides that will be able to come and zoom into classrooms and do follow-ups and be contacts for parents. So if they have questions, that staff will be available to work with them. Like always, it just will be on an online setting.
Okay, thank you. A question on that emotional support, all these support questions really are coming in, but our emotional support team, how large of a team do we have, even just with our school psychologists who are available to offer that?
We have a very large team. We have approximately 70 school psychologists. We have over 40 school nurses that all make grade contacts. At the secondary level, we have our 7th through 12th grade mental health specialists, which is specifically designed for our secondary students with social emotional support. We have our transition teams. There are all kinds of supports. And like I said, it varies a little bit from level to level and site to site. But we have a whole team, and they are ready to support our students and in whatever way that they need. And so like I said, parents can reach out, students can reach out, and with our teachers' daily interactions, they're going to be talking to students, and if they have a worry or concern, we'll do referrals as well.
Great. All right, thank you. We also have some people who have little ones who are wondering about preschool services. And I know that was a big question that we were honing in on early on when we got that announcement last week. So can you update us on preschool?
Yes, we just did get some news that preschool also will be online. And so I would encourage parents to contact our child development office if they have specific questions. Janet Samuelian, the director of child development, does a wonderful job over there with her team, and they'll be ready to answer any parent questions.
Thank you. A couple more questions for Dr. Castillo before we move on. There have also been some questions about choosing classes right now. I know that I've heard you mention that with everything online right now, and I think we briefly spoke to it earlier, that your class schedule, all of those courses that you would typically have, you have access to. And then parents are asking, well, okay, but if I choose online and 2 months from now we're online, am I still going to have access to that spot, or is it the same class schedule? And so can you speak briefly to that?
Yes, once a student starts with a course, they're going to need to complete that course. For some of our specialty courses, like a CTE or an AP, we may have to make some sort of accommodation of what that is going to look like. But students will be starting with access to those courses. So whatever they registered for last spring, those are being loaded into the master schedule, and our counselors are working really hard to get that ready for students. And so once the school buildings are open again, they'll be able to work with their counselors on their courses and what that's going to look like.
So if I heard correctly, then if I registered for that AP Chem 3 class, start of school, I'm going to be in that with all of the students, whether I had originally said online or in person. And then at some point, if it's mid-semester, that we transition back to an on-site environment, but my child has a health condition and the parameters at that time might not make that the best choice for them, they would be completing that course. We're not going to drop kids mid-semester or have them not be able to complete the courses.
Correct. What that looks like might change a little bit, but the course itself would not change. One thing too that I wanted to add in that I didn't mention earlier is that I want parents to be reassured that we're offering a wide array of trainings for our teachers in the area of technology, because I think that's an important thing to know. And we're even offering some things before teachers report back for those that want to get a jump start on the school year and get some extra reinforcements. And so teachers are really prepared to support kids and you know, that's really important. We know that there's a lot to learn, and we want to have those opportunities available for our teachers to support them, because they're the workers out in the field. They work really hard, and we appreciate all that they do, and it'll be really important for us to support them in their work with students.
Thank you. I know as Mr. Jager was speaking, a lot of questions were coming in about some of those safety protocols that really are for when students are back on campus. And so just for the sake of time and for the sake of the fact that by the time that happens, as you're going to hear Mr. Johnson speak to in a few minutes, there may be different protocols in place that have to be accounted for. So we'll hold future meetings to speak to that type of question about testing protocols for teachers and things like that, just because the landscape is going to look very different by the time we reach a point of being able to bring that on site back. So Mr. Jager, unless you want to chime in with something on the testing conversation, I think that would answer the question that came in related to that specifically.
Oh, Kelly, thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, we will stay very fluid with the you know, adjusting times that will be coming forward, and especially as we get closer to the start of school, we will continue to work with our employees and stay current with all of the guidelines and mandates that are shared with us from the Department of Public Health and from the CDC. And we have been on their watch. We have stayed current with all of the meetings. It's something that is very important to us. You know, from Dr. O'Farrell to Mr. Anderson to our Director of Nursing Services, we have so many individuals that are connecting to our county and to the, obviously to the state guidelines, but we are working very closely with our county departments. And so we're very thankful for the work and the partnership that we have out there. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. So before we introduce Mr. Johnston, I'm going to ask a couple more questions of Corinne Fulmer as well that have come in, and also reiterate for those joining us late, this will be taped and it will be available on that same YouTube channel along with the slides that we've shown thus far. A couple of the graphics I know warrant a little closer look by our families, and so that all will be available, as is the full website with a lot of our safety and return to campus plans. So Corinne, there were a few questions related to science classes with lab work and PE, which is certainly a big part of our schedules as well. So can you speak to how that might look?
Yes. So, you know, with science classes, our teachers are already thinking through these things, and there is a lot that they can do with demonstrations themselves with that live real-time instruction that they'll be delivering, as well as with technology today, there are a lot of virtual labs that students can complete through Google Classrooms and through the online material that comes with our adoptions and things, and other resources that will help them without actually doing it in person in a classroom, still get some of that learning and experiment to see how that evolves and what happens. And so I know our teachers are working hard. In fact, many of them are already meeting, even though they're not supposed to figure out what's going to be the best way to, you know, convey some of those hands-on, because I imagine that will be true not just for science, but some of our hands-on CTE classes. And those teachers are already thinking outside the box about how can I take something that's usually with a lot of realia in the classroom and kids are doing, and translate that into this virtual environment and what's reasonable to ask for them to do at home. And then Kelly, I'm sorry, the second part of that was PE. Sorry, yes, PE. So with physical education, you know, it's going to be a little bit of probably some working with parents and trust, you know, because we're not going to be visibly able to watch students sometimes like do their running and compliance, but there will be logs. I also envision that many of our PE teachers speak a lot and care a lot about the whole student. And so while they'll also be addressing, I'm sure, you know, the physical and fitness components, they do spend a lot of time in their PE classes talking about overall health, social emotional wellness. They talk about foods that students eat and addressing just overall health through our PE curriculum. But all of those details will be communicated as, you know, we work through back to school night and get some of that information out, as well as about the expectations for each course.
Thank you. I think there's so much information that our families are hearing right now, and it's so different, and it comes on top of just the anxiety and the pressure that I know we've all been feeling since March as a parent, and certainly our educational team. And so I just want to kind of recap what I've heard you say to this point. I think a lot of parents are questioning about if I can't be with my child during the day. Let's say I have a junior high child, so they're going to be home by themselves and they can tune in. Am I forced into an online model, or can I still go ahead and for now access the kind of partial online model that we're talking about that would continue and turn into an on-site model? Or do I have to pick that Edgenuity version of the curriculum? So if I work during the day and my child is going to be, self-monitoring, or maybe have a family member watching, am I expected to say online in that choice, or can I still pick the one where their teacher is going to be interacting with them?
So it is a parent's preference on what they want to do. I know our teachers are planning on that communication, because our teachers worry too. Do I have a student that's not checking in, and what's going to be, how do I get a hold of those parents, and that overall support from both sides while parents are working, and that communication. But no, I would say that with communication and working and some of the problem solving that we are trying to do on that technical support at home with students logging in, that I don't want families to feel like just because I'm a working parent, I have to choose the Edgenuity. We are having some supports in place to help with the training and supporting our kids to engage in that daily interaction with that model. And I hope that answered the question. I was trying to get to the gist of that.
Okay. And I think as we said earlier, and just would continue to reiterate, if you have questions, certainly you can also begin to pose them to your site principal, or contact through our website forms and things. We are still continuing to make sure that we're reaching out in that capacity. And Dr. Castillo or Corinne Fulmer, I'm not sure which of the two of you would answer this. We touched on VAPA, choir, and drama. What band, for a student who's enrolled in those courses at the high school level, what does their first week or so of school look like in this online version? They're still enrolled in that class, correct?
Yes, and I actually met with our director of VAPA today, and they're working through, some students have instruments at home and some do not. And so they're working through how do we equip the students that are committed to that class, that, by the way, is their passion. How do we support kids at home and accessing that through Zoom, just as our other courses do? We have seen a lot of wonderful things done through virtual choirs and a wide variety. And so our teams and teachers have been working, tirelessly, once they've learned we're going to this model, on how do we engage our kids in the things that they love to still provide those options. It may look a little different, right? But there may be small groups and different things that occur for specialty instruments. They have a lot of support people within the bands at the secondary levels that can also reach out to follow up with students as well.
Great. I said, contact your principal, and I'm sure a lot of parents immediately said, well, gosh, it's summer. But I know that given the times that we're living through, many of our principals are still looking at their emails. Certainly the district office is open. Parents can also contact their high school area, and we can get them in touch with folks who have those answers. And then August is very much right around the corner, and that's when our staff is back and on site, if you would, to be able to also answer. So emails are always checked in on periodically. So I do want to clarify that. And so with that in mind, I know another big question that we have asked a lot is the parameters for Fresno County, and what does that look like, and what is that bar that we need to meet? So Mr. Johnston, I know you're going to talk a little bit to that and some of the other questions about our operational plan, food service, things like that. So I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Kelly. And yes, I think with Governor Newsom's release on July 17th, and really defining the parameters for us to what we need, where we need to be to physically reopen schools, was important for us to give us that guidance to know where we're headed and how we're going to get there. So that allows us to really understand exactly what we're dealing with and how we get there. And that data is actually on your screen right now, and actually the California Department of Public Health is the ones who are monitoring this and putting this on their website, and that's at cdph.ca.gov. has the data for this for all counties, so you can actually look at the counties that are able to operate on a physical on-site location, and the ones that are struggling with meeting the numbers that they need to meet. And as you look at this data, you can see there's key, and looking at this data, you can see there's key areas, the elevated disease transmission. 3 key areas that we've got to meet: elevated disease transmission, increasing hospitalization rate parameter, and a limited hospital capacity parameter that we need to look at as a school district. And when it's on the website of the California Department of Health, whenever there's a number in one of those columns that are blue that's down below and there's not a check mark, it means you're not meeting the parameter. So you can see in the parameters here right now, and this has changed, and this is updated as of today's information that we just received and getting off the website. But you can see many of the areas we have not met the need for where we need to be right now. And that's actually has changed over the last few days, because we weren't as, we were doing better in some of the areas, but those numbers have changed for us as we move forward in the last few days. So as you look at this, as you look at case rate greater than 100, and that's a case rate greater than 100 per 100,000 population, that's over a 14-day period. And you see we've got to be in that situation, we actually have to be less than 100 when you look at that number. And that number is at 191 for us right now, 191.1. So I think that's a number we'll continue to pay attention to, because that's a 14-day analysis. Really looking at those 14 days. So the reality is we really need to be in the neighborhood of 100 or below in those case rates in order for 14 days in order to meet that parameter to come back to school. And then you can see the other parameter in there as far as the case rate positivity. We also have increasing hospitalization rate. You've got to be, as you look at that, greater than 10% increase. If we have a greater than 10% increase, and you can see we're at 14.3% right now, then that box can't be checked and we're not meeting the parameters. So any one of these, we may not meet the parameters. And you can see the information there for limited hospital capacity. We've got to have less than 20% of ICU beds available, and we're at 16.4% as you look at that number for us. And with ventilators, as the only area currently right now in Fresno County, we are checked off on, and we are okay with at the present time, and we hope that continues. But we will be paying close attention to this data as it changes on a daily basis to really be watching that. And I think, as I said earlier, the 14 days, as we watch 14 days to see exactly where we're at. One of the questions too is that's come up is, when might we be able to come back and be able to do on-site physical education? As we look at that, as we look at the data here, it's a strong parameter to be able to meet. So it'll be some time, but I would say too, it's anyone's guess. And I'll tell you, as far as the number of cases per day, when you look at the number of cases per day, we'd actually probably have to go back to the first part of June in order to even meet that parameter of 100 cases or less per day for a 14-day period. So that's, you can see how far we actually have to go back to meet that parameter and where we're at. So cases have been, we've had a large number of cases daily recently. So that's going to challenge the reality of trying to meet these parameters. So as I said, again, it's going to take some time to get to that point. It's anybody's guess of where we will actually get to a point when we will be able to start school. And it's definitely dependent on, how well we turn this thing around and people start to get healthy and we start to get through the COVID-19 situation here. So there is another thing I want to mention. There has been question too about a waiver for elementary schools, and that is only for elementary schools. It's not for the intermediates. It's not for the high schools. The reality of that waiver is it actually has to be approved by local health officers in order to get the waiver, and it has to be requested by the school district superintendent first, and then reviewed by the local health officers to say that yes, it's okay to do that. And also, it's reviewed by the California Department of Public Health in order to approve that waiver. The reality of waivers for elementary school, it's not going to be a district like ours, of a large school district getting a waiver for our elementary schools. This is going to be one-off cases, maybe some small elementary schools that are very isolated, that haven't had cases, that are very low on their case count, that can be able to reopen, and that's going to be determined by each elementary school outside of obviously Clovis that is interested in doing that for their school district. But for us, we have right now no intention of submitting a waiver, and I believe even if we did try to submit a waiver, it would not get approved. So we're not going down that road. We're continuing to move forward with the plan we have in place and where we're at. As we look at one of the things that's come up with our online learning plan is the question of whether or not we will still be able to provide meals. And yes, we were doing everything just like we did in the middle of the pandemic. We had our essential workers, and I congratulate our food service staff, our many staff employees that came out to hand out meals and deliver meals. Our warehouse staff are staying online to make sure that all can happen. We had a lot of essential workers making sure that continued to happen, and we continued to provide meals in the middle of even the shelter in place. We will plan to continue to do that. We're working through the logistics of that. We've obviously got some things to work out with the state as far as if it's the same parameters we had before that allow us to just provide meals, or we've got to account for each one of those meals we provide, which means we've got to show every student that's getting a meal, and we've got to actually charge for those meals that are happening if we no longer are on what was called a summer seamless program. Summer seamless program through the state and the Fed actually gave us the ability to provide meals without the accounting and the charging of anybody for those meals. Now we have to look at that situation and see what they will allow for moving forward, and we're continuing to monitor that, and we're developing our plan based off what we're going to be allowed to do. But we will be using our school sites, we'll be using our transportation and our staff to help deliver and provide those meals even for the online situation we'll be in. So we definitely want to continue that. We know it's an important aspect for many families to have those meals, and we want to make sure that's ensured and continued. One of the other things has come up too is why are other groups using our campuses? As we look at other groups using our campuses, we do have a facility request process. There was a couple of churches that were using our facilities, parking lot, and using outdoor facilities. We haven't allowed any indoor use of our facilities by outside groups as we managed our school sites and tried to keep them clean of COVID-19 and moving forward. The reality right now is we have approved no outside groups besides just a couple of churches recently before we actually had the guidance from the governor that allowed them to operate outside, but outside sporting events and things like that have not been approved by the district to do those. We have seen, and we realize, we have facilities that are open to the public, and we're proud of those facilities, but we have seen where people have gone out there and just ran events without a facility request or approval. So those are things we're challenged with as we continue to make sure our facilities are available to the public, but also the challenge of monitoring those things to make sure that they're not being misused or by people that have not been approved. So I think those are the key areas and the questions we've had thus far. I think as we look at that list of that's on the California Department of Health, pay attention to that. We will be paying close attention to that list and the days and determining when that date is. We're getting closer to the opportunity to bring kids back physically to our school district. But again, I think that'll be some time, but anyone's guess as we move forward. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnston. Before we close out our time with Mr. Anderson, there are some more questions that have come in. So I'm going to spend a few minutes fielding those to our panelists as well. One of them is about grades. I think it's a pretty simple answer, but Mrs. Fulmer, can you explain, will kids be getting grades with the online learning?
Yes, students will be receiving grades. I want to preface that if they are in a kindergarten TK class, it will be their standards-based report card. So grading will return to how it was prior to COVID. In simple terms.
There you go. Now, Dr. Castillo, there's a question. I know you mentioned that we're going to have another forum for our special education parents, but that is after the date that's currently listed for completing your re-enrollment or your annual information update. Can you clarify how that would work then for special education parents who might still have questions?
Sure, absolutely. Again, when we're asking parents to make a selection right now, it's just their best thought of what they're thinking right now. It's not a commitment. That the actual commitment would come closer to the time that we would reopen the school to face-to-face instruction. But I would say after the special education presentation that night, if a parent felt like, gosh, I'm thinking in a totally different direction and would like to change their mind, that they could contact the school site and let them know, and we would be happy to make that adjustment. Because like I said, we're not holding them to that commitment. We're trying to look at our staffing and our availability. When it actually comes time to commit, that will be at a later date, and we'll make sure all of the parents have that full information.
So that's a great piece of information, I think, for all of our families to just hear once again. I know it was mentioned earlier that a choice right now with your students' annual information update is really just us getting your expectation or your hope, your preference. It is not a signed on the dotted line, you can't make a change. We recognize that things are going to look very different. So for the first day of school, August 17th, under our current mandate to do online instruction, whether I chose in this moment in time online or in person really is going to look the same for my student. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Correct.
Okay. And then for that question, going back to Edgenuity, Dr. Castillo, can you clarify or just speak to, having said that, who would pick that Edgenuity option, and what would that look like right now for a choice then?
You know, I think the Edgenuity option will probably be for a smaller segment. As Mrs. Fulmer mentioned, if students are able to access the online during the scheduled time during the day, then that would be available to anybody who feels like they can take that option. So older children who are home and are able to, you know, monitor themselves, go online, go to their classes, that option is totally available to them. What might be an exception, and there could be many of them, but this is just an example of a student that would like to, you know, do lots of work on Tuesday, not so much on Wednesday, have the flexibility to do things in the evening. You know, if a parent felt like I really want to be there while my student is working online, then, and they aren't available to be there during that scheduled day, that might be when that option comes up, because we're building that schedule during the day, so parents and students know when they need to log in and for which course, and it's very scheduled out. And I would say, you know, if they have any parent that has further questions about the options and how they work, to please reach out to their area and to their school site principals through email, and we'd be happy to answer those questions.
Great, thank you. And then a question for Mrs. Fulmer. In general, between now and August 17th, those passwords for Google Classroom, the technicalities of what students often get that first week of school, how's that going to work? Are they going to be hearing from their classroom teacher with more information, or can you kind of lean into that a bit?
Yes, I think, you know, this brings up a great point. There is so much routines and information that's disseminated in the first weeks of school, right? Classroom routines, how to log on, getting textbooks. So those same things are going to occur. They'll probably be very similar to like how we may have done device pickup or packet pickup, right? And scheduled to control the number of students, but we're going to need to get information to parents. I think there was a question I saw earlier too about, you know, about packets, and instruction is not going to be delivered through packets, but it is possible that for those primary ages that there's reinforcement materials that go home with holding a pencil in kindergarten and a crayon that, you know, that they'll pick up from their school sites. But passwords and that, I imagine the first week's going to be a lot of orientation, answering questions, making sure that our families and our students are ready and equipped for the instruction that's going to proceed until such a point that we can return to face-to-face.
And I would say that also then likely includes those parents who were asking questions about just being able to look for help themselves if they're taking on maybe a bigger role in helping their child navigate instruction. are there resources, and how are we going to be trained as adults to support our students? And I know we mentioned briefly, but maybe you could reiterate that.
Yeah.
That would be.
I think that, our technology department does a great job of putting out videos and instructions from our websites. I know that sites will be working to push information out to parents to help aid in that. We also are trying to arrange for people at the site that can respond to technology issues or help answer questions for parents to help alleviate those struggles. Because, sometimes something works great one day, we recognize that, and the next day, it just didn't quite work the same way when you got in. I think the big thing will be training our families on how to access Clever, because most anything a teacher is going to ask them, the access will come if they can log into Clever. So we will absolutely be working to get out information, videos where feasible, to help walk families through that, as well as have on-site support. It's a great question.
Thank you. And I think evidence of the fact that we've been fielding lots of questions online, and as we've been talking as a panel, we got another question. I'm going to actually put Mr. Anderson on the spot with this one about student discipline in the time of online learning. And when you're in a Zoom environment and there's a student misbehaving, how's that going to be handled? And maybe you could take that answer and then move into our final comments as we approach the 6:30 hour.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kelly, for the easy start to my section. But just know everybody should be reassured that our administrative staff and our administrative team, including our student resource centers, especially at the secondary center, will still be at site. They'll still be working and handling issues that do arise. We have 43,000 students, and as you can imagine, situations are going to arise, not just with discipline, but with student safety, with additional concerns, that those resources are still there. And students will go through a training of what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do during Zoom meetings and while they're using district resources and during the school day. So everybody will be educated on that. That doesn't mean there's not going to be a student or two that makes a bad decision, but we have resources to follow up with those students. And we also still have the tip lines that can be anonymously populated with information where students do have concerns or parents have concerns about students misusing during the day where we do have the jurisdiction over them. So we'll handle that, and we have the staff to handle that as well too. And so if it's okay, I'll go ahead and move into my next one before I get another tough question to handle. Thank you, parents. We are an hour and 28 minutes into this, which will be as long as the longest section, probably instructional section that we're going to see during the year with this online learning piece and everything of that sort. And maybe just to summarize and to put it in very clear medical terms, the situation just stinks. There's no other way around it. And please know that we've had a staff all summer that's still been supporting students, that's still been supporting staff. We have our staff, as Dr. O'Farrell mentioned, that have been working all summer on a reopening schedule. We have staff at the district office and transportation and food services and at school sites even, and campus club and all the rest that have been working hard, not just for the summertime to get students back in as much as we can, but also to plan and to hit really a moving target. And for many of us, this district is our family. It's been my family since I was a student, and it continues to be my family. And in fact, to further prove I have no life, most, if not all, my friends are based. My friendships are based on parents who are of Clovis Unified that are fellow students and staff members in Clovis Unified. We're all working extremely hard to provide the best education for all of our children and young adults. And so this work, I know sometimes it just seems like there's not a clear answer. There's not a yes or no answer. And quite honestly, sometimes because there's not really a yes or no answer, but we're trying to finalize as many of those answers as we can while the target continues to move. And I know it's how are we preparing our children? Both my boys who are in high school in Clovis Unified are living with this just like your children. And I'm sure my kids are tired of me saying, we're waiting to hear what the Department of Public Health says, or we just got different direction from the state when they see it on the news, or we're working on that one also. I'm not sure that's the greatest parenting, but it's honest conversations that I think we have to have with our kids to let them know that things are going to change. Things are going to change between now and August 17th, and things will change after August 17th. But I think it's important that all of us really work with our kids to let them understand everything's going to be fine. We're going to get through this, and it's going to be different. And a lot of life is, how do we handle things that are different? And how do we really navigate those differences and those changes in life? And as we call them, as I'll quote one of our learning directors from Clovis West, Nikki Sorensen, it's pivot preparedness is what we are working on. And we're really trying to help. All of our kids, I think, want to be back in school in some case. They want to be safe. Same with our staff. They want to be with their teachers, friends, coaches, etc. But we're going to get there. But we've all got to be patient, and we all have to do really what the county needs us to do, which is adhere. When you know, and that's what we're doing at the district office. It's what we've been doing all summer with meeting, or when we're out in public, is adhere to the rules of social distancing and mask wearing and all those things, so we can get past this. A couple of questions did come in that I think I'll address, and one is, what happens if mandates are changed again between now and August 17th? If they do change between now and August 17th, we're going to process those just as we have the other mandates. Our entire community normally hears the mandates about the same time we do. There's no secret early warning confirmation of what the changes will be. Normally, it's just speculation that we will get. And once the governor or once the county health department puts them out is usually when the media hits it, and we get it about the same time as well too. So if those mandates do change, we'll be sure to be able to incorporate whatever those mandates are into our plans for the online learning instruction. I think it's going to be different because if we're close, and I think as we get closer, that 14-day limit of being off the watch list is really August 3rd. It's not that far away. And we're in close communication daily with the Fresno County Public Health Department and the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. And it doesn't seem likely that Fresno County is going to be off that watch list anytime soon. So we're planning, as you've heard, for online instruction as it is in its current mandate, and we're preparing for that. The other question was, how quickly could on-site instruction start once we are off the watch list? And realistically, I think we have to anticipate being off the watch list. It'll be that anticipation that'll be important to make sure that our parents and staff are resurveyed, as you've heard before. It's real important that we understand. The student information update is one that we do every summer. We've done it online, I think, for the last 5 or 6 years. And that's one that we do every year. We're just utilizing the student information update right now to, first off, ask what would be your preference? Is your preference still the same what it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago? And we know it may have changed. It's changed with our staff, and we're resurveying staff as well. But what will that look like right now, at least? That does help us plan a little bit as we're planning some of our master schedules. And then the other part is, it also gives us a chance to ask about the technology, because between really, why is there a July 24th deadline? We've got to really take a close look at making sure we have the computers at the schools where they need to be, and also the hotspots available. And so that July 24th gives us that ability to really work within that next 2 weeks to kind of go, okay, we've got computers, we've got to get them to families, here's where the school sites they need to be, and here's how we're going to be able to get those out. So that student information update is, I think, real important for us. And I know we're all getting tired of surveys, and apologies, but realistically, everybody's opinion could change between now and the next month or two, as it has changed in the last month. So that survey, as we get closer to what it looks like could potentially be a reopening of students being able to come back on campus and staff being able to go on campus, we'll send out another survey. And that'll be important. And we'll adjust our master schedules and our staffing plans based on what those students are as they return, which is why Dr. Castillo was easy to say. It's that student schedules could change a little bit because we're going to have to match. Now we're going to end up redoing a new master schedule when those surveys come back, if we're allowed to come back. And we also, I think that time to do that, at least to be able to readjust, is going to take a little bit of time. So it's not going to be, the March 13th to March 16th pivot time that we had this last time. We want to be able to allow teachers to finish with instructional units and students to be able to be prepared for, okay, here's what's the next transition going to look like. So it's not a Friday to Monday transition. It could be a week or two transition as we navigate what those changes will be. And so I think we're also going to want to make sure that teachers, I think I talked about that one a little bit, but we'll be working more on the pivot to back in-person instruction, but I can guarantee it won't be like it was in March. It's going to be a little bit earlier planned out. In addition, we also don't want to bounce back and forth. And we've heard that concern, by the way, we've heard it at the county level and within our district, just when us thinking about it. We don't want to be off the watch list and get everybody back in school, and then a week later, we're back on the watch list. That back and forth can be very confusing to people. And so we want to make sure that the data is really leaning and trending towards the county being off of the watch list for a consistent period of time. I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's what most school districts are doing. Plus, our own Mr. Steve Ward, our legislative analyst, is working with the Fresno County Department of Public Health to review some of those data points so that we can better anticipate. In fact, the whole county can better anticipate what that pivot will look like and when that possibly could be occurring, looking at all those data matrix that Mr. Johnson shared with us earlier. And I think the question was already addressed about the home to school communication about your teachers' classes. I think you're gonna get all that information as well too. I think Mrs. Fulmer already shared all that. Plus, we realize this large Zoom, which I don't even know how many people are on now, I think there was close to 3,000 the last time we checked. It's not the best communication format. It's not the best way. We're trying to spread a wide brush and answer questions as best we can in this. And so our next level of meetings will most likely be in smaller meeting settings with your school sites, with areas that everybody's sort of used to, with SART meetings and the area SART meetings and those types of meetings. So we're going to try to move it into a smaller format. Realize some of this information is just good for the whole district to understand and to hear at the same time as well too. So Kelly, I think I will pass over to you. Thank you to everybody for being online. I want to just a quick shout out to all of our staff and our teachers and our faculty senate and our staff that have been working so hard during the summer. I know it goes unnoticed sometimes, but trust me, we all notice it. We all appreciate all of their hard work, whether that's in person, which a lot of them have been doing it, or virtually. We do appreciate all the work that they've done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Thank you to our whole panel. You saw our leadership team on tonight, but I also just want to mention, in addition to thanking all of you for joining us, that there was a team behind the scenes. We had received more than 1,000 comments before this event started. And just in this hour and a half that we have been on, we've received an additional 400 plus comments and questions that came in. And there was a team of people combing through that online comment form and feeding us questions by text, and so that we could be responsive and answer. Again, not the ideal situation that we would all love to be able to be in person, but really just making an effort to make sure that we were answering the questions that were on the minds and hearts of our community. So a big thank you to the behind the scenes team from our communications office of Patty Lippert, Sarah Alvarez, Jonathan Mathis, Kelly Ferramisco, and Darren Grubel, who have been next door, socially distanced and around the building, working together as a team to get that information and to process the questions that you all posed tonight. I know that there's a few we still didn't get to that were very specific to sites, and we'll be continuing to update our frequently asked questions to respond to those. And things like, is there going to be back to school night? When will I get my computer if I've asked for one or need one at my home environment? Know that that's information that will be coming straight from your school site. We're going to get laptops and devices into the hands of our students as quickly as possible. I know there was a question that came in early about if I'm looking at purchasing a device for my child, should it be a Chromebook? Should it be a laptop? Should it be a tablet? I think those are questions that our technology office is going to put some information out, and we'll get that up on our website right away within the next couple of days as well. But again, just a huge thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Superintendent O'Farrell. One more time, a big shout out to our ASL interpreter, Stacy, and our Spanish language interpreter, Rebecca, who have also been working to just bring inclusion to the event tonight as well. So Dr. O'Farrell.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, and I just want to give a shout out to my team. We really have a wonderful educational team here in Clovis Unified, and they've been Zooming all day today and yesterday and on Monday with our employees and just various employee groups, trying to debrief on the governor's order and make sure that we have as many plans put into place for tonight's presentation. I want to echo what everybody said about this being an evolving situation. I like pivot preparedness. It's not my favorite thing to do, to pivot midstream, but as Mr. Anderson said, it's another life lesson that all of us are going to be learning, is how to deal with uncertainty and how to deal with changing quickly. So I just want to thank all of our community for tuning in tonight and for being flexible and for bearing with us as we try to navigate all the questions that you've put to us, and they will be answered And I want to echo also that our site leaders are there for you. So make sure that you reach out to our site principals. They are anxious to make sure that their parent communities are linked with them and that they can make sure that they meet all of your needs too. So we'll be in touch and we'll continue to fine tune our system so that we are ready for August 17th and we have a great start to the school year. So with that, I just want to thank everybody and I'll let Kelly sign us out there.
Yes, again, thank you for joining us, and watch your inbox for additional dates of other meetings and other opportunities to continue this conversation as things evolve and we prepare for a great start to an unusual school year for Clovis Unified and for our students.